A caravan of more than 1,000 Central Americans, men, women, and children, is traveling across Mexico tonight. Mexican authorities are speeding them toward their destination, which is our country, our southern border. These are not refugees. They are border jumpers. They have no legal right to come here. And that's about the sum total of what we know about them at this point. We don't know if they have skills that we need, whether they speak English, whether they're gang members. We know nothing. Here's what they know about us. They know that if they can cross the border into California, they're set. Democratic politicians in that state will shelter them and give them benefits. From California, they can go anywhere in this country, just like millions and millions before them over the past 30 years. If you're wondering why America is not anything like the country you grew up in, this is why. Will anyone in power do anything to protect America this time? Or will leaders sit passively back as the invasion continues? Over the weekend and earlier today, the president sent a series of tweets that seemed to reflect frustration. Quote, "Act now, Congress," he tweeted at one point. "Our country is being stolen." Well, to that, official Washington scoffed. How dare the leader of our country pretend that we have the right to determine who comes here? What a racist. Here's Jim Sciutto, a former Obama political appointee who now poses as a journalist over at CNN. Watch.
As often happens with issues like this, we enter a fact-free zone. I mean, you got to fact-check the president on this. I mean, first of all, you heard that Fox News rhetoric, an army of migrants. I mean, it's not an army; it's a caravan. It's a group of folks who are seeking asylum. The president tweeted there are caravans, as if there are multiple groups of people kind of storming the border. That's not true. It's one group.
Just a group of folks seeking asylum, or propaganda from the Obama people pretending to be reporters. Shut up, America. That's the message. You have no right to complain. That's CNN's view, which means it's the left view as well. Is it America's view? Do voters agree? Do voters think that we have a moral obligation to admit every single person from around the world anytime who wants to come here, feed and house and educate them at our expense, even as our own middle class dies? Maybe voters do think that. I guess we'll find out in the midterm elections. This will help define those elections. Enrique Morones is the founder of Border Angels, a pro-immigration group, and he joins us. Enrique, thanks for coming on.
Hey, Tucker.
So I understand that you're for more immigration into the country, but I can't imagine you would support people walking across Mexico and just showing up, expecting to be let in. If that were to happen a lot, we would no longer be a country. So what should we do with these people?
Well, Mexico is not a hostile nation, like you mentioned earlier.
Of course it is.
The people that are coming from, no, of course it isn't. And the fact that these people that are coming from Central America is the same thing that's been going on since Reagan interfered in the Central American policies in the late 70s and 80s. These are people that are escaping violence, escaping hunger. They're looking for refuge, and they're trying to come into the country. And when you have a Border Patrol spokesman like Chris Harris encouraging them to come, telling them, just show up at the border and say asylum, and you're going to get in, that's a lie. That's not the way it works. And it causes these people to flee. They're crossing. They think they're going to be able to get in. Most will not be getting in.
But I'm not really sure why I don't know why you would feel an obligation to defend the government of Mexico, which is abetting illegal immigration into our country, which has been literally for years, which has trained people explicitly with documents that we have on how to get into this country illegally. I don't know why you would be flacking for them. I don't know what's in it for you exactly, but let's stop lying about it. Mexico could stop this right now. Mexico is a very long country. It's a long way from Honduras to Tijuana. They could stop this, but they're not. This is an act of hostility.
The thing is that we allow the freedom of people to be able to travel freely within the country, as a lot of countries do in the world. And I will defend Mexico because you're lying. Why don't you show me a document where the Mexican government is training people, like you just said, to cross into the United States? The Mexican government isn't doing that. Are there people doing that? There may be.
Really? Because they were giving that, you know. I'm sorry. I win with superior knowledge here. The Mexican, no,
superior arrogance.
Of course it is.
I know you're from San Diego, and your racism and ignorance is very well known.
Right? Okay.
Yeah,
look, the Mexican government has given instructions to people. I've seen them with my own eyes on how to get across the border. But the point is, this group of people could be stopped any time by the Mexican government, which, again, you feel the need to make apologies for, but they detain people all the time in their country from Central America, as you know. But they're not detaining these people because they say they're going to El Norte. So they're a hostile power. But why should we have to accept anybody who comes here?
Most people aren't coming to the United States. Most undocumented people go elsewhere. They have no desire to come here. Of the 250 million undocumented people in the world today, the United States has 11 million. And that flow has shifted dramatically, dropped 40% in the last 5.5 years.
But why should we take any? No, but you're missing it. Why should we take any? There are a lot of people who want to come here legally.
Yeah, but there's no way for these people to come in legally. And the United States interfering in these countries, the demand for the drugs, invading a sovereign land like Iraq, or interfering in the civil wars of Central America, that causes people to flee. The U.S. should be more welcoming.
So
and
our
there's 20
sins,
much
our
more
sins are the reason this is. So you hate America, is what you're saying.
I
don't know why. Actually, it's interesting. You're blaming America for illegal immigration into America. People
Central
come
America
here.
is part of America. Central America is part of America. Mexico is part of America.
The United States is a separate country. It's not the same as Honduras, actually. One-third of all Salvadoran citizens already live in the United States. So at what point can we say we've atoned for our sins in El Salvador?
Stop
do two-thirds have to live here?
in the policies of other countries. Stop taking their natural resources. Stop invading sovereign lands. You have a president.
Are we taking the natural resoresources of Honduras right now?
Remember Donald Trump? I mean, that guy, he's an embarrassment to the world. He says they're coming for DACA. DACA ended in 2000. People had to have been here by 2012. Donald Trump doesn't know what he's talking about.
Let me ask you. I'm not asking you your opinions on Trump. I'm not interested. I'm asking you about the policies that hold on. The policies that affect all of us as Americans. And you're saying that Hondurans have a right to come here because we take the natural resources of Honduras somehow? Can you be a lot more specific?
Absolutely. The invasion of the United States of sovereign lands, whether it was the interference in Central America with the Reagan administration.
What do we do to Hondurans?
Well, have you heard of Iran-Contra? Have you heard of the fact that the United States is the #1 consumer of natural resources from other countries? The #1 consumer
in
of illegal
Honduras?
drugs?
So these people are coming here to punish us for bad things we did in Honduras?
No.
Are you representative of people on the left? Is everybody this dumb?
The United States has a large
responsibility.
And when they invade sovereign lands, when they take from sovereign lands, they should be a more welcoming nation, and they are not.
But
there's no legal way for the people to come in. They're desperate. People are crossing borders all over the world.
I just want to have a rational conversation.
They should be able. Yes, we should have one.
All right.
Yeah, we should have a
Get
rational.
back to me when you can explain what we did to Honduras to deserve this. Thanks, Enrique. Well, a caravan from Central America is walking through Mexico tonight. They're seeking to be let into this country. They're demanding it, actually. The president says he dislikes that idea, so of course he's being called a white supremacist.
A migrant army. Listen to that phrasing there. This is an army. It speaks to an invasion of brown people, right, from Central America. This is the implication there.
Easter wouldn't be Easter without a little brown scare. Right after his Happy Easter tweet, Donald Trump went right after immigrants.
The first guy, by the way, was Jim Scudo, who works at CNN, who was a political appointee for Barack Obama, now pretending to be a journalist. It's too much. Mark Stein joins us tonight. So, Mark, I guess the point that the left is making right now is that we have no right, under any circumstances, to deny people entry when they come here. Period. Doesn't matter who they are, where they're from, what skills they have. It doesn't matter. We have to let them in. Is that the position?
Yeah, basically. And kind of what's wacky about this to me, Tucker, as I understand it, basically half the illegal immigrant population, including these 1,100 people or whatever it will be up to by the time they actually hit the Rio Grande, about half the illegals in this country came here since 9/11. In other words, they broke into a country that's supposedly on orange alert. We're told we're on an orange alert. If law-abiding persons go to an American airport, they're barked at all the time. Be advised, the security coding for today is such and such. And yet, at the same time, 1,100 people have announced they're just going to walk into the country, and the United States government throws up its hands and says there's nothing we can do to stop them. Well, in that case, what the hell is the point of Orange Alert? Why are 300 million law-abiding Americans shuffling shoeless through their airports like a bunch of, like a bovine herd? If any of the 6.5 billion people who aren't American around the planet can just walk across the Rio Grande or take a flat-bottom boat and walk into the country. What's the point of Orange Alert?
What's the point of a government, actually? Because the point is that we're the problem. As one of our guests earlier told us, as Jim Scudo or whatever his name is on CNN told us, we're the problem, actually. These are the virtuous ones trying to get in. We're the impediment to their progress. Shut up, America, and obey.
And, you know, he probably doesn't know it. There was a French novel published 45 years ago by Jean Raspail, The Camp of the Saints. A lot of people on the left don't like it. But it actually predicted what's happening before our eyes. A bunch of people got in a ship at India and sailed for the south of France in this novel. And all the media commented, like the CNN guy you just quoted, what's the big deal about this? We are the ones. We are the sinful ones. We are the ones with the stain of all the wicked isms on our past. Imperialism, colonialism, racism. These people are the virtuous ones. Let them in and they will redeem us.
Do you ever get the impression you've been softened up for this exact moment, that people have been telling you to shut up and obey and that you have no moral standing and you're not allowed to give your opinion? Basically, so we get to the moment where you can just be told to step aside and let people come in your place.
I think that's largely what it is, in fact. And that's why I always pay great attention to the left's assault on language. Someone just said, you know, those of us who oppose this are anti-immigrant. Actually, no, I'm an immigrant. Yeah. It's a rather boring thing to be because it involves going to government offices and filling in paperwork. But the left has appropriated that term, so it now effectively means an army of people who don't bother with paperwork, who simply, as your first guest said, simply from being in poor, impoverished countries whose resources the United States has pillaged, supposedly, they have the virtuous right to just walk in to the country.
So why should we care that a statue to President William McKinley, a victim of gun violence, by the way, is about to be torn down in Northern California? It feels like one of those things that's worth paying attention to. Why is it?
Well, I think it's worth paying attention to because it shows that when you hand the left a victory, they move on to the next thing. Rich Lowry, the editor of National Review, said on Fox News last year, he said he didn't feel terribly excited about defending Robert E. Lee and Jefferson Davis, but you can bet your bottom dollar that if they come after Washington and Lincoln, he'll be right there defending those guys. Well, they're now actually tearing down statues of American presidents, of a guy who took a bullet for his country. Once you hand them the first victory, they simply move on to the next ones. And you know what's interesting to me, Tucker? Obama, when he was talking about what he looked for in his judges, said the quality of empathy. Empathy requires us to be able to understand human beings in the age in which they lived. You're not tearing down a statue of McKinley. Right. You're tearing down the representation of all the Americans who voted for him, agreed with him, supported him. You're in fact disowning your own history and saying, I'm just going to live in a hyper-present tense, disconnected from my past.
That is exact, and I knew you could explain it better than anyone I've ever met, and that is exactly right. That's exactly what bothered me about it. Thank you for articulating that. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot,
Mark.
Tucker.
See ya. America's military presence in Syria